Hello, my name is Athena Van Overschelde, and I am a recent graduate of the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science. My presentation today is Maritime Heritage Trail Histories and Public Engagement in Cultural Resource Management at Biscayne National Park, and is looking at the utilization of detailed historical documentation and developing technology in online interpretive materials. This research was completed as part of my thesis for my Master of Professional Science Underwater Archaeology degree. Biscayne National Park was first established as a national monument in 1968 and was later expanded and redesignated a national park in 1980. It is currently the largest marine park in the national park system and contains over 75 documented historic vessels submerged throughout. 6 of those vessels make up the Maritime Heritage Trail. The image shown here is a map of the location of those vessels. At the very north, we have Aratun Apgar. Then below it, we have Lugano, Mandalay, Earl King, Alicia, and an unidentified 19th century sailing vessel. After Hurricane Irma hit Florida in 2017, the National Park Service began to reestablish a baseline data set for each site and have continued to utilize developing technologies to document these sites in detail. The primary goal of my thesis focused on providing Biscayne National Park with in-depth historical research on the vessels from their launching through their wrecking event. Using newspapers, letters, and court and military documents, the history of the 5 identified vessels was documented. The steamship Earl King, for example, was part of a crucial turning point in the history of shipping. In the late 19th century, it became popular for clipper ships to race from China to London with the new season's teas. The fastest clipper would get to sell the tea at a premium because it was therefore fresher and more desired. In 1866, 9 ships sailed from China to London with the tea, and the race was closely followed by the public. Although Earl King could not take part in the race because it was a steamer, it arrived in London a full 2 weeks before the first clipper ship. This changed the shipping industry forever as people began to realize that the future of shipping lay with steamer vessels. The image on the right shows an article from the Miami Evening Record. The steamer Alicia hit Ajax Reef in April of 1905. While cargo was still being removed from the vessel, the Miami Evening Record began running advertisements for day-long excursions out to the vessel. These were probably very popular because during the court battle that followed regarding the cargo, it was revealed that the steward of the Alicia was illegally selling gin from the cargo, by the barrel or by the bottle. These histories are being combined with updated interpretive materials on the Biscayne National Park website, so that those who cannot visit the park or cannot dive or snorkel the sites can still learn about the history and resources available there. In July 2019, a joint effort between Biscayne National Park and the Submerged Resources Center branch of the National Park Service was conducted with the goal to employ a 3D photogrammetry multi-camera array to collect high-resolution images of the vessels on the trail, and was dubbed Sea Array. The image here shows Sea Array being used in Biscayne National Park. The Sea Array took thousands of images and stitched them together to create 3D photogrammetric maps of each vessel. These maps will be put onto an ArcGIS StoryMap online in combination with the historic research and documentation that I have put together. Halfway through my thesis, the COVID-19 pandemic led to the closures of schools, universities, museums, and businesses as people followed new social distancing rules. On March 1st, 2020, Florida confirmed the first COVID-19 cases, and by the following month, the state had issued stay-at-home orders. For archaeologists, the onset of COVID-19 meant that fieldwork was canceled and schools and labs were closed. Archaeology and learning had to move online, and the efforts put forward to update the online interpretive materials for Biscayne National Park has come during a time where access to online educational and engaging materials is more important than ever. As part of my research, I had been focusing on what Biscayne National Park was doing to bring archaeology online, as well as researching other parks and sanctuaries that are utilizing technology to engage the public in new ways. For Biscayne National Park, the new website that will be live will include the story map of vessels, their histories, and the 3D interactive maps of each site. This image here shows the photogrammetric map of Earl King. There are 8 features of interest noted that can be clicked on, and a brief explanation will appear. For example, in this image at the top, it says evidence of historic salvage. This large square cut in the hull was likely done during the historic salvage of the vessel's cargo and machinery, or could have been done in an effort to collect scrap iron for the war effort during World War II. This feature was not previously documented until the sea array system showed it, and it shows the tool's potential to provide new information on previously documented sites. Although this image is stationary, the ones on the website will be interactive, and the viewer can click on things and zoom in on the vessel. There is also a goal to include an additional image of the vessel Mandalay after the application of the algorithm See-Through. See-Through was created by Dr. Daria Akainak, a mechanical engineer and oceanographer at Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute. See-Through is an algorithm that removes the visual distortion created by the water, and Mandalay will be the first use of this algorithm on a submerged archaeological site. See-Through could be useful for underwater archaeologists in the development of monitoring programs for these sites, and could be a fantastic way to show the public what a site would look like if it was on land. One of the first examples outside of Biscayne that was researched was Channel Islands National Park. Channel Islands has long had to adapt to learning online because of their remote location off the coast of California. In a collaboration with Explore.org, Channel Islands has instituted something called live dives. Divers, with the use of full-face comms, can give talks about what they are seeing and answer questions from students in classrooms or from people at the visitor center live. After the park partnered with Explore.org, they noticed that viewership of Channel Islands Live jumped, with some streams averaging 50,000 views. As of right now, live dives is difficult to implement at other parks and sanctuaries. For the live dives to work, the diver has to be connected to land so that the video can be streamed. Explore.org is working on testing new ways of broadcasting this while in deeper water and further from land, but it is still in the works. Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary has over 100 shipwrecks that range in depth from 10 to 185 feet, and they have a variety of interpretive materials available to park and website visitors. These include 3D models of 7 different shipwreck sites with points of interest, an ArcGIS StoryMap that gives the location of each vessel in the sanctuary and history about them, a virtual dive gallery of 14 vessels that can be viewed on a computer, smartphone, or with the aid of a virtual reality headset, and our stationary 360-degree images of 12 different vessels. Recently added to the NOAA website is a virtual dive that offers an immersive 360-degree view of the DM Wilson. Divers swim slowly over and through the vessel while a voiceover explains the features being seen and the history of DM Wilson. Lloyd's Register has a virtual reality experience called Ship Surveyor Through the Ages, available for download through various game companies, where the player can explore 3 different vessels from 3 different time periods. The player can virtually walk around and learn what a surveyor would look for when doing inspections on a 19th century clipper ship, a 20th century steam composite vessel, and a modern day vessel. Although the game is short, it is free to anyone who has a virtual reality headset and a console or computer to download it, ensuring that they can reach a large population. With the onset of COVID-19 and its impact on the world, it is increasingly clear that the utilization of advancing technology will be imperative to continue to bring archaeology to the public. Some museums and parks are already doing this, pushed by remote locations and the drive to provide interpretive materials to everyone. ArcGIS StoryMaps and 3D imaging are already implemented in many places, and as technology changes and advances, this will continue to be a fantastic way to introduce the public to archaeology online. See-through can be applied to 3D images and videos and be a huge asset to show the public what submerged archaeological sites look like without the water distorting the image. Live dives, although difficult to implement in many places, work is being done so that live dives can be conducted farther from shore. Being able to answer questions live online would be a huge asset to many parks and sanctuaries. Virtual reality is being used in a few places but should be considered moving forward as virtual reality headsets become easier and cheaper to produce. Those who would not otherwise learn about the different types of vessels now have the opportunity to be immersed in history and educational information through Ship Surveyor through the ages. By combining archaeology and technology, we can impart the importance of protecting our shared histories, even during a global pandemic. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.
So there we are. I'm sorry it was short, and I thank you guys so much for bearing with me while we got through that. But that's her talk. There she is. And like I said, I'll post her contact information in the chat if anybody wants to reach out with her. I can probably also give it to Deb. If anyone wants to reach out to her, she can send it out as well.
I have a question. Do you know much about that explore.org? Have you ever worked with them or?
I haven't. I don't know if Athena has or not, but it's definitely a good resource, I think.
I know a little bit of it. It's a website that carries live feed from all sorts of places, from animals out in the wild to kitties and dogs and pounds and all sorts of stuff. So I think it's kind of a big clearinghouse. I don't know if it's something that we could send to Athena. What would be nice is maybe some links to the websites that she talks about. I'm familiar with Lloyd's Register from doing research on a family member's ship ownership, and I didn't realize their website also contain this tour aspect to it.
I was, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, I was thinking while she was talking that we have several projects which CAS has been involved in, either directly or indirectly. I'm thinking specifically of Cherokee Ranch and also the excavations out at West Bijou. And in both cases, I think they could really benefit from this storyboard approach to ArcGIS storyboard and photogrammetry. I know Joe Garrett has been working a lot with the photogrammetry stuff, and he probably came to full attention when he heard that, if I'm suspecting. But the interesting thing to me about all of this is sort of where we're all going with this, because it seems like the national parks are all adopting this technology, and everyone who hangs out a shingle trying to attract visitors is adopting this technology. But it's kind of ironic that those places are accessible to all of us via our phones, but they're cemented with their feet in cement, literally, in one place. And they can't leave that place. And the resource can't leave that place. And as a visitor, we're deprived of that. So is this where it's kind of like Fahrenheit 451, where in the future, we're going to be all just looking at our phones and we're not going to be visiting any place. And all of our historic and archaeological resources are going to be accessible to us by phone. But, once we see 100 of those or 1,000 of them, we're just going to sort of file it away as an image that we saw on the phone and not identify and learn anything about the place itself. And I think we're losing that sense of place, which is so important for people. As an anthropologist, a lot of people's decisions are based on the place where they're found and their identification with the landscape and the land itself and so forth. And I think that to go overboard with this technology it has a risk associated with it. that we may not be able to anticipate very well. So just a thought, you know, about where we're headed as a society, among other things. But
I'd like to comment on that if possible. I was thinking about what you're talking about, and I think it's a double-edged sword when we're looking at you know, providing this kind of information out there, right? We've got this virtual realm, which is not only beneficial to those who don't have access, you know, and I think that's a really important thing, is that now we've got the possibility to have that virtual access for anyone to go. But there is a very real truth about place and where we fit into it. I mean, I was just thinking about my first experience at like Chaco Canyon. I mean, I remember, John, taking one of your archaeology classes and studying Chaco Canyon and being so enthralled, and it's like this magical place. And then I got there and it was tiny, right? Everything was so close together. I thought it was this huge expansive thing, and it was miles between Pueblo Bonito and Pueblo del Rio, and it wasn't. It was very, really close together. And I realized that, you know, my perception through books, you know, through my research, hadn't really met with the actual spacing. And I think there's that realization that through virtual reality, you can kind of see that, and at the same time not necessarily see it. And so I think it's going to be a mixed reality that we're going to be sort of experiencing with all of this. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's great, but I think it also comes with, you know, some caveats that we have to always consider. So, but I think overall we're moving in the right direction when we're doing all of this CGI work and we're creating virtual landscapes and virtual experiences. I think it's great, but we still need to encourage people to go there, you know, and at the same time, also encourage people not to go there. And I think part of that is like, we need to save certain places. There are certain places that could be, you know, that, you know, are tourist attractions and people will destroy just by being a tourist.
Bears Ears.
Yeah, Bears Ears,
Yeah.
exactly. So we need to look at those locations and say, let's do this virtually, and then shut it down for, you know, the actual public, so that we can still share it but not destroy it. So yeah, there's definitely, you know, a double-edged sword there, but I think it's definitely moving in the right direction. I might be biased because I'm a visual anthropologist, so you know, and this is the kind of stuff that really gets me excited. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to be concerned with.
Craig,
Yes,
in
John.
your interactions with the Natural Resources Department, how much emphasis do you place on remote access to the resources that you're trying to manage?
I was just trying to find what we do. We have a very similar approach. We actually use the ArcGIS story maps too, because a lot of the land that we work on is private, and you know, people wouldn't typically have access to any of the resources that are out there. And so it's a good tool for you know, documenting things that are, like Joe said, you know, it could be a problem if too many people are at the site, in terms of public sites, you know, Machu Picchu or something like that, but also places that people have a tough time getting to, you know, because it's private access or whatever. And so in terms of, you know, in terms of creating an archive of what's there, I think that this interactive approach is pretty good. But you're hitting the nail on the head, John, in terms of, like, you know, the experiential approach of experience of being at these places, right? I mean, cultural geographers have talked about this for 30 years now. You know, the new cultural geographers basically abandoned the approach of that we could just describe places to people, right? You can't just go out there and describe all the elements on the landscape and expect that has any kind of real impact or that people make any kind of real connection to that. They actually, there is that experience that you have to have in that place, and you know, and develop and have your own experience there. You know, you have your own preconceived notion of how that space is supposed to be used and encountered, and all of these things. And you know, you can't do that in a virtual setting in the same way. So yeah, we do a bit of it, and it is a good tool, and it certainly checks a box from a government agency standpoint, in that you're doing some kind of preservation and mitigation on these kinds of resources. So in that sense, it's good.
So I took a class last term on the effect of tourism on climate change. And I'm also teaching a seminar tomorrow on eco-anxiety. And the really positive thing about the virtual reality is it's much less of an impact than people going there physically. And I think that's something we really have to start thinking about. You know, as the climate headlines get worse and worse, and you know, what just came out today, that 2020 was the 5th hottest year ever, that type of thing. We really have to look at reducing our impact on the environment. And this virtual reality is one way to at least people can learn about and enjoy it.
Good point. Wow, we're actually having a discussion. Pretty unique for our group. That's pretty exciting.
I'm just so pleased that it was just a video recording and there's still a conversation going on with it.
No, it was a good choice. I think she's a good speaker, and I think the work that she's pulling together is very useful.
Because she's even better in real life someday, though.
Yeah,
Someday
well,
we'd
we'd like to tell her we'd like to meet her, and she's always welcome.
Absolutely will.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that what I found interesting with all this is how things are coming together, with Joe's talk in December, then Ray Sumner's talk about his work at Julesburg, how he's hoping to put all his stuff into ArcGIS, create a map, an inventory of all his things. And I was just thinking too, a mutual friend of ours, Michael Turlip, who had been diving on a World War II plane, where they were planning to do 3D mapping of it for preservation, as well as to be able to bring it to the public. It just seems to be a thing that is taking over the profession. And as John said, there's some bad things in terms of creating problems. If you think about the cave in France that has had to be shut off because of people going in there, but they did at least make a film so that you could see it and make a replica. And it addresses, you know, Deb's commenting on the effects of tourism and climate change on these sites. So it's all interrelated. And I think it's important that it be addressed in the field of archaeology. And I don't know, it's just a way, I think I don't know if COVID was the trigger for it, or if that's the way that the profession was heading anyways. So that was just all I wanted to say.
I was just thinking, because prior to the pandemic, I was actually working with a GIS librarian at the Auraria Library. Okay, and her job, her job is specifically working with GIS, and she and I paired up unsuccessfully, might I add, but not through any intent. It ended because the pandemic struck and we just stopped our project. But we were working on doing photogrammetry and how to sort of put it into GIS. And neither one of us knew the answers to that. So, this was definitely happening. And I think that over the course of the last 2 years, people have really made huge strides towards getting this accomplished and doing it in a really productive way. And I think that, overall, I think we're going to see a huge push in this direction in the future. And I think it's great that that's happening. And I think that, just as normal research, as archaeologists, as anthropologists are going out there and, doing their research, that photogrammetry and stuff like that should be a standard tool that all archaeologists take out there. Because, one of the big things, it's like, you find something out in the field, you can leave it in the field, leave it in place, leave it alone, but take those photos, create that model, bring it back and be able to share it. And I think that could be extremely important. Plus, going out, say you're working on a site and you do your modeling on it, and then you come back in 10 years and you see if there's any damage, if anything has happened. So doing, remediation, if there's any problems, you can come back and check it out. So I think there's all kinds of great applications. And this was I think a really good presentation to kind of emphasize the various aspects and ideas that are being put into use for photogrammetry and for sharing this information. And I think that's another thing that we have to consider, is that this is stuff that we can actually share. This is stuff that, can be put out for the public to enjoy, and not just be for the academics and not just for us. And I think that is something that we really have to consider as we're moving forward, because I think there is a big gap between, academia and the general public. And I think that gap needs to be closed. And we can only do that by sharing what we're doing and what we're learning and why it's important.
So I have a question for Joe that I have no clue. So I'm asking you if you know. What are the relative benefits of photogrammetry versus LiDAR? Do you know?
So the big difference between LiDAR and photogrammetry is sort of detail. So LiDAR, you're going to get, depending on the sensor that you're using, you can get extremely high detailed models created by LiDAR. The difference is that it doesn't necessarily have the photo finish of photogrammetry. The photogrammetry is basically taking all these pictures and having the computer model it. And so you get more of a color realistic, but sometimes sloppy look with photogrammetry. And depending on, say, if you're out in and this is something that we experienced at Cherokee Ranch, when I was creating the model for the mesa itself. So it's a very large model. One of the issues we came up to is that the foliage, the bushes, and all of that stuff, it looks kind of mushy, and it's because there was a breeze. And so you're connecting, 100 photographs of these trees and bushes kind of moving just a little bit, and it looks a little fuzzy. Everything else that is static
Sure.
has a very clean and precise look to it. Yeah. Okay. But anything that you're gonna, and LiDAR is gonna still run into some of those issues with foliage, but it can also penetrate foliage as well. So, and that's one of the really cool things about LiDAR, is that it's going to scan through some of that and be able to build out. So there are very good things about both. Photogrammetry being like it's photorealistic. It looks real. I can see it here, and it's like, wow, it's like I'm actually in here, and it doesn't necessarily look like a 3D model. So yeah, they both have their benefits, but they also have a few drawbacks as well.
Kayla, I don't know if you have to hand the screen share or the host duties back over to me. I do have, John, to your question, I found I have our website up where we have the story map. I was just going to share it real quick.
Can you share it with a chat or something?
No, I have to be the host, I think, to do the screen share.
Or at least a co-host. If you were a co-host, you can too.
No, I just sent you over the thing, Craig. You should be hosting now.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. Let me see if this works. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a mitigation project that we did for some canals, irrigation canals on the western slope that are being rerouted and things like that. And so it's kind of a good example of something that may not be particularly interesting to the public. I mean, it might be interesting to a few people, they had maybe some historical connection to this kind of thing. But in terms of archiving, it's much better than what we were doing in the past whenever we had to mitigate these ditches, which was basically taking some, high resolution photographs, sending in GIS data to the SHPO, and then it basically sat on the shelf somewhere that nobody would ever look at. So we were trying to come up with a more public facing approach to it. So the story maps allow us to kind of put some more detail in here that's, good if you were the public, somebody in the public that was looking at it. But then there's also what you can do is you kind of drill down into an individual ditch on this canal, and you can add, lots of details that may be good to researchers in the future. And part of the ArcGIS part is that it's connected with this data, so you can actually see where it is on the landscape, and then match up photos to different parts of the ditches, different parts of the ditch, things like that. And then at the bottom here, archival documents that discuss, they go into detail about the water rights and everything that was associated with this particular segment of the ditch. And so we've got good buy-in from the folks at SHPO's office on this, at least in terms of kind of small scale mitigation for these types of projects. And like Joe said a minute ago, part of the advantage of doing something like this is that if there are artifacts and it is on private property, I mean, realistically, those belong to somebody, and you can't take them off of there. But this is maybe a compromise of not taking the artifact off of the property, but at least having some kind of forum where more people can see it. So that was it.
Cool.
So Craig, I have a quick question on this then.
Sure, yeah.
Do you actually send your data, is it stored in the cloud at ArcGIS, or is it taken from data stores that you guys keep at your location?
So it's our data, okay? So we've physically gone out there and mapped those canals and taken the photographs and done all that stuff. And then we have a subscription to ArcGIS Online that gives us access to the story map feature. And so we're just uploading that data into there. So what they're really providing is almost like a template web page, and then you're just kind of filling it in with your own data.
But I mean, are they then keeping the data, or is the data still on site at your place?
Well, both. We still have all the data on site. Yeah, correct. But it is also stored in our NRCS subscription to their cloud service.
Okay.
Right. So it's in both places.
So you're paying, you pay so much for them to keep the data, and that's part of your subscription.
Correct. Is that there's a permanent, stable, web location of it there.
Thank
I
you.
was gonna say, Craig, and I'm sure Joe could address this too, is that I could see this also expanding into documenting artifacts as an inventory instead of collecting them.
Oh yeah.
Everybody has problems finding space to store this stuff. Here we could do a 3D image, but I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing? You
Well, I
know,
think
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, in our case, where we're doing lots of work on private property, and probably any artifacts that we photograph are never going to be seen by the public again. That's really kind of the only option. I think if it's in a more public setting, certainly that's an alternative, but I don't know that it completely replaces the need to, still keep the actual artifacts for future analysis that there may be technologies in the future that we don't even know about that could be done on those. So I don't know if it completely replaces that need. I still think, storing artifacts in a physical location is still always going to be a necessity. But in some instances like this, where, you may not ever have access to it again, it certainly is a type of archive.
yeah, because I worry about like, I know that from Joe's presentation that if need be, you can scan these artifacts and then print reproductions of them.
Mhm.
And it sort of does that become, that can spread to museums, if they're not wanting to expand their collections, but at the same time want to be able to show the most recent finds, that they could maybe move to this idea of 3D reproductions, but I don't know if that's a good thing.
Most biological anthropologists interested in human evolution have taken to scanning a 3D scan of fossil hominin skulls and teeth and so forth. And not only does it preserve the material itself, once you have a scan of it, you can also share it with your colleagues, share the data. All you need is a scale, and you can take your own measurements of a 3D model and so forth, and play around with that. There's also here in Colorado, Neil Hauser and Craig Bannister and a whole bunch of other people have been doing the P3 project, where they're going around to different places in the state where there are private collections of arrowheads and all the collectors. In fact, Cass has a history of starting out with a lot of collectors in their membership. And Neil is in the process of, he's got a 3D model for recording the projectile points that he's been working with. And it would be nice to get him maybe as a future speaker in to talk about his progress on the P3 project. It's projectile point something. I can't remember what the third P stands for. Maybe it's just projectile point project, actually, when I think about it. But it's ongoing, and I know he's got almost 10,000 items. Colorado's a really amazing place archaeologically, as everybody knows. But
Is he doing the Lindenmeyer private collections?
I do not know. That's a Neil Hauser maybe Jason LaBelle, who's worked with Lindenmeyer materials, also knows the answer to that, but I don't. I could try to find out for you, Deb, if you're interested.
Yeah, that'd be great, because
I
I
think
am.
Neil is mainly working Western Slope collections.
Oh, Western Slope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but he travels around, and Craig is here in Denver. And Craig is working with, I know people up in, was it Longmont, I think? I I can't remember, the Longmont Historical Society or something like that, a Longmont Archaeological Society. There's a club of people who do a lot of collecting, and sort of an old fashioned club where they trade stuff, and you know, they bring their Riker mounts with all the arrowheads, making nice patterns and things like that. So he's going to those and sort of working behind the lines, enemy lines, so to speak, of people who have acquired these artifacts, and at least getting them documented. And people, when they collect stuff, they don't always remember exactly where they're from, but they know about where they're from. And what Neil's doing is he's taking a statewide approach and just using large spaces on an oversized quadrangle division of the state. And he's able to put almost all the points into one of those quadrangles based on, you know, the collector's memories. And it doesn't have to be quite that accurate for his purposes, and it's working out pretty well. He's doing a good job, and he deserves, you know, to have our membership, I think, help in that process, because I'm sure everybody in this room knows somebody who's got an arrowhead collection somewhere. And it would be nice if we could do it. And it doesn't have to be, you know, overt. It doesn't have to be, it could be anonymous is what I'm saying as well. If people want to leave it that way, it's fine. He just wants the information from you know, the material, and that's a noble cause, I think.
Yeah, John,
Yeah.
it's the Loveland Archaeological Society you're thinking
Loveland,
about?
not Longland.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And Larry Evans' father's collection was recorded, and also from
Cool.
Eastern Colorado. And Jack Warner's been helping Neil with Ken Carroll stuff. And I'm trying to think what else, because I was involved with that for a while, but I just didn't have time because it's very detail oriented and it takes a lot of time for each artifact.
Yeah, I know that Neil and Craig have both mentioned to me that they would be willing to train people who want to get involved with that and who want to help.
Yeah,
So,
I took one of those trainings. He had one up in Old Town Arvada several years ago.
Yeah, so if you're willing to do that, you know, let me know and I'll pass your name on to Neil.
I would love to get involved in that.
Deb,
Yep.
I'll put you down, and I'll why don't Deb, Stacy's got your email, so I'll be able to send it on to Neil, and I'll let him know. I'll let Craig and Neil know that you're interested, Deb.
Oh, so you'll talk to Stacy about Deb's email. I see how it is.
Oh boy.
You have my email too, John, because I sent the email for this meeting.
I do have it. You're right. I do. Never mind. Just ignore the guy in the glasses. Did Amy, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Did you want to, you were trying to work a word in edgewise.
Oh, it's all good. I was just going to kind of concur with what people were saying about everything. And I was thinking too, just about how, you know, any of this information that is recorded and put out there in all of these various digital formats will also serve as part of the record, you know, and Joe kind of covered that when he talked about mitigation efforts, right? If we come back to a site 10 years later and we're able to see the differences, if there's, you know, some sort of environmental impact or tourist impact or anything like that, that's really big. So it is a double-edged sword. I agree with it. It is important to be able to have the experience, but the accessibility and being able to share with the public in a new way, you know, from so many different states away or different countries or whatnot. It's incredible. So it was a good conversation. I appreciated it.
Amy, before you go,
yeah,
do you have, when you were working at Baking Pot, I know that most of the Belizean sites have been looted. More than 99% of them have been seen some looting.
Sure.
Is there anybody who's doing like long-term monitoring using photogrammetry or anything like that?
You know, not that I know of off the top of my head. I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone that I just haven't heard of. I know, especially with COVID, but before COVID too, that they were seeing such an influx of archaeotourism in general. And the way that the Department of Archaeology is set up for the country has always been, at least since Belizean independence, really involved with the archaeological sites. They actually closed a lot of sites, which is good, or made them 10 visitors a day or something, depending on the site. So there's some sort of mitigation there, but I'm not sure. I have a friend that lives there, and I could reach out to them and ask.
I'm just curious,
if there's someone working in that. I'd be surprised if there wasn't. I'm sure there has to be.
I know in Peru they're doing it, so.
Yeah, it makes complete sense to me that somebody is, especially with all that Nat Geo money funneling down into that area right now. So
There's that.
hopefully someone is.
So do we have a speaker for next month, by the way?
Hey, John, I was wondering if I could jump in there real quick before you moved on to the next.
Yeah, sure. Jump away.
Well, a quick thing I wanted to mention, kind of following on what Amy was talking about, especially when it comes to like photogrammetry, collections that are already in-house. So one of the things that when I was my short time at UNC, I got a chance to take a look at some of the stuff that they have in their own collection, and some of this stuff can't be returned to the original communities because it might have like mercury, or it might be contaminated with some sort of preserving agent. That kind of stuff could be looked at as an opportunity to do those things, turn them into, because they had this amazing headdress that they would never be able to return to its original community because it's toxic. And so if we could capture that in that model and be able to say, this is here, this thing is, and it can't go anywhere, but we can at least share it. And museums have been doing this for, they've got massive collections that will never go on display. And that's another thing that could be used using this technology, creating those virtual museums and virtual displays, but especially dealing with things that can never go back, or even depending on the situation, dealing with like NAGPRA issues. If you're returning something, being able to have that 3D model and be able to maintain it and also return. And there's some moral questions to toss in there as well, but that is also an option.
But you need permission to make the model, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of those things. It's like, can we do this for science, or are we going to, say this is yours? Can we continue to have a virtual model of this, or do we just give this back? Overall,
people may not want you to have an
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think those are some really interesting questions that we're going to have to deal with, as we're moving forward with this information and this technology. I think that is a very, very serious question that we have to discuss, because, there are unintended consequences by engaging in new technologies. And we were like, yes, we've got this cool stuff that we can do. What are some things that might happen that we really do need to pay attention of? And how is that going to impact other communities as we are incorporating all of this new technology and being able to share it, exposing those cultures to a much broader audience that could create an unintended consequence? And I think that is something that we also have to concern. Maybe there are some things we might get a model of and never share it, because we don't want people to go out looking for it. So I think these are, again, it's any type of new technology, any type of new way of doing things, we really need to ask some very serious questions about its use and the impact it could have that we might not necessarily think could happen.
I could see an object so powerful that to take an image of it would be offensive to the spirits themselves or to the people whose lives depend on the power of that image, of that object rather. So
yeah, and it's not even something we need to consider in the future. You know, it's something we need to be considering now. It's something we need to try and figure out now. I spent this summer working with Michaela Stock at MSU in the Human Identification Lab, just helping her catalog. And we have boxes upon boxes of just unlabeled bones in Xerox boxes. She doesn't know where they came from. We don't know where they came from. She's been in contact with the NAGPRA liaison at DU, so she's trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. But you know, this is stuff that we need to be thinking about now.
Absolutely.
yeah. Good stuff. So back to my question. Do we have a speaker for February yet?
Yes, I'm not sure where Craig went. Craig had a speaker lined up for January who unfortunately was affected by the Marshall Fire in Boulder.
Carol
So
Bean.
Yeah, Caroline. So I'm not sure if she's going to be available, but if she is not available, I do have somebody else lined up. She's a master's student at CU Denver right now. Her name is Samantha Murphy, and she's working on a bioarc project in Lima.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I thought you'd be stoked on that.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to talk more about that with you sometime, but
Yeah, sure. Anytime.
we're out of, I think
We are a little over now.
did Craig leave or is he?
I don't know where Craig went. It looks like he left.
Did he
He may
make
have had to take a call or something.
But it was fun, wasn't it?
It was
Yeah,
great.
it was very interesting and good
This is the first time
discussion.
we've ever had a discussion like this among ourselves. This is
I'm really
very
excited about
beneficial.
it.
Yeah, I hope so.
We used to do that all the time.
Since we're still recording, Kayla,
Yeah.
I'll send an email, but if you talk to Craig, put the bug in his ear that because of the length of the presentation, it might be nice to have this discussion. He usually edits. So
Okay.
it'd be nice to have this discussion available to membership looking at the video. But I'd also, I think most people, I won't speak for everybody, but it would be nice that once Athena is recovered, it would be nice to have her in person to discuss these things and
If she's
see-
willing, yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, no, she was so excited to be here tonight. It was so last minute and unexpected. We went to the Society of Historical Archaeology conference this weekend, and she left on Sunday with a little bit of a sore throat. And then at about 6:30 this evening, her boyfriend texted me that they were on the way to the ER. So I'm not sure what happened, but yeah. So I'm just glad she had a recording available for this, and we were still able to do this and have this good conversation and have that facilitate this. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
be sure to
thank
let her
her.
know that.
I will.
Okay.
Okay, can we adjourn? I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, I second.
Done. All right.
Think we're all in favor. Good nights.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
guys.
much, Kayla, for pulling that together the last minute after Carol had to back out. So we do appreciate it. And
Absolutely. And I
pass on.
appreciate you guys. You know, it's kind of unprecedented times. So I appreciate your flexibility and understanding.
Yeah, well, just be sure to pass on our thanks and concerns for her, and we'll be holding her in our thoughts.
I will let her know. Thank you so much.
Okay. Night.
Bye.
Night, everybody.